Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tammy from HITCH. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. So I'll just do a little bit of an intro about HITCH, who we're hosting this webinar today and hosting you all. So HITCH is an educational technology company. We're currently building a platform, an educational video platform for Nigerian students and teachers. Hence, and that's why we're hosting this webinar today, focusing on basically developing educational video resources. And then Henry and Numudu also give us a little bit of focus on how teachers can leverage digital resources in this new digital transformation in the world we're living in right now. So I'll hand over to Zach, who will be leading most of today. Zach is our Chief Business Development Officer at HITCH. He's also our content lead.
Thank you so much, Temi, and hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. As Temi had introduced me, I'm Zach Byrne, so I am the Chief Business Development Officer, but I'm also in charge of our content at HITCH. And then just to reiterate, as Temi had said, the big focus today is really focusing on how to design and develop educational resources, and in particular, educational video, as we feel that it's a very strong resource given the remote realities that have been brought on by COVID-19 at this point in time. So for my presentation, I'm going to be focusing really on how to go about selecting those resources, designing, and then a little introduction into how to develop those resources yourself, so how to develop educational videos. But before we get into that, we are very lucky to have Henry Anumadu with us here today. And so he's going to be starting us off. And Henry has been a fantastic inspiration to us at HITCH. Not only that, he has really put the word change maker to its full use. He's been a fantastic resource for the community of teachers in Nigeria, and really has been a key resource for figuring out how to transition in the role of teachers and transitioning to this new digital reality that has been brought on by COVID-19. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Henry, and then I will be back to jump into my presentation here in a little bit. And again, Henry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you, Temi. And I can see Uche there. I don't know if it's his video and audio is off. But thank you so much to the HITCH team for inviting me here. I look forward to an amazing presentation, just talking about really the ongoing transformation of the teaching profession in Nigeria and also in Africa as a whole. But today, I'm actually really glad to be here with HITCH. To be given the opportunity to, just speak about this new phase of the teaching profession that we are seeing. And I'm also particularly excited because HITCH brings in a really unique and targeted solution, especially to this problem in our context here in Nigeria and also in Africa as a whole. So going on, the paradox of everything, right, is that 2020, right, 2021 also was the year teachers became essential workers, in a sense, right? Just at par with maybe the doctors in the front lines and the other workers. We saw a massive response from the world, or massive recognition from the world, about the important role teachers play in the lives of children. We saw the importance of the central role teachers play in the life of child, family, nation, and the economy. It was clear and it was uncontested. And for the first time, teachers were seeing that, oh, they had a whole career line outside the school system. We saw teachers creating homeschooling packages for parents, and we saw teachers thrive outside the classrooms. I've spoken with parents who have hired teachers, amazing teachers, who have ensured that their children continued learning during the pandemic. But another problem, again, is, we go back to the initial problem, is that this opportunity wasn't open to everyone. It was just the digitally enabled that had, access to this new opportunity that just opened up for both teachers and also for schools as well. on the other spectrum, we had teachers on Twitter who, for example, because I see it more on Twitter, teachers who really were struggling and they were looking for, aid. They were opening up, GoFundMe just to be able to survive. So the question here is, considering these two spectrum of teachers that existed last year and this year, one, those who really flourished, they were digitally enabled, and those who struggled, they didn't have their foot or a good understanding of the digital world. The question is, how do we expand that access to that digital world to every teacher in Nigeria or even in Africa as a whole? And I think when Zach comes on, he'll be able to throw more light on that question. And also another question is, given that the world embraced the importance and the role teachers play, how do we retain that status and create better conditions for teachers in Africa? How do we build systems for ourselves as teachers to create impact and also sustenance? And I know that the response to this changing world of the teaching profession, and really to every change that has ever happened in the history of mankind, is, we don't want this. Let's go back to the old familiar ways. It's too complicated. Using the digital world is too complicated. There are just so many things. There's Google, there's Moodle, there's Google Classroom, there's Moodle, there's Zoom, there's just so many other options. Some may even say there's HITCH. They are too complex. Let's leave them and let's go back to our classroom. And when this comes up, I always remember the story of Kodak. I don't know if of course, so many people here will remember Kodak. I remember when I was in secondary school, when we were obsessed, as young children then in secondary school, we were obsessed with taking pictures, right? So we will go to these shops, these little shops by the side of the road, and maybe invite them sometimes to our schools to come take our pictures, or we go to their studios to take pictures. They always used Kodak. Outside their shop, you will see the Kodak films, just strewn everywhere, just scattered everywhere. And years later, I got to hear that Kodak had gone bankrupt, right? Why did they go bankrupt? They felt, so the digital technology came into play, right? So now I have my phone, for instance. I can take pictures and I don't need film that Kodak was selling. And in fact, it was an engineer in Kodak that came up with the digital technology, when we don't need film to wash film to get our pictures. But Kodak said no, right? It's too complicated, nobody wants that, nobody's going to pay attention to that. And they stuck to film. And before you know it, other technology, other companies, just the world moved on to digital and left Kodak with film, and Kodak went bankrupt in a few years, right? This is maybe a kind of a business case study, but it's also an important highlight for us as teachers or head of schools as well. That we might say, yes, it's too complex. There's just too many things. Let's go back to what is familiar to us. Let's go back to the brick and mortar. Let's go back to the classroom. Let's go back, to the chalkboard and whatever we have. And that's always an option, right? It's always an option. You could choose to go back. But one thing you should always know is that the world will not go back with you. The world will move on. So that is why it's important to always continue to innovate, always continue to grow. It won't be easy, but you just need to keep changing. So it's an exciting topic, right? This going back or going ahead, which is often always so interesting to me. I was able to dig up a 1920 newspaper, right? So this was in 1920, we had the first broadcasting radio company. Like that was the first time a radio company was set up. And of course, this was a headline on the newspaper. It was saying, radio, a blessing or a curse, right? So there was people who said, oh, radio is a curse. Oh, radio is going to spoil the generation, our children of radio is so awful, and we should go back to our newspapers. We should go back to our print. That is what we want. That is what we are familiar with. Of course, we see this happening again and again. When radio got so popular, it was accepted. Television came in, and the same argument again. Oh, television is evil, and television will, change the world. It would spoil everything. Let's go back to radio. And of course, social media came again, and they said, oh, social media is, it's rubbish. It's going to, take all our attention, short, what is that called? Span of attention, or attention span is going to reduce the attention span of our children. And again, we keep seeing this. We are currently seeing the fiat versus Bitcoin argument. The Nigerian government just banned cryptocurrency in the country. It's still the same thing. Should we go back, or should we move forward? And of course, there was the chalk versus digital argument as well. Should the education system even adopt that? So now it's almost like we are all here to make that same decision. Should we accept digital or not? I'm kind of confused. I'm kind of convinced that there are so many people who are yet to make that decision, who are yet to move. Should I, as a teacher, move into that digital world? Or should I still remain in my old familiar ways of waking up in the morning, writing my lesson plan on paper, moving into the classroom, teaching in person, going back? Should I still remain there? Or should I look for ways to adopt the digital world that is taking everything by storm? So it's not my place really to answer that question for you. I'm going to leave it to you to answer. Maybe after this whole webinar, we may put out a poll, Zach, to say who wants to stay back or who wants to go forward. But one thing is certain: change is difficult, right? Change is difficult. And we're in the cusp, right, of a revolution right now. A revolution in education, a revolution in teaching. And of course, it was forced by the pandemic and everything. It didn't happen very organic. It was forced. We were forced to talk about this. We're actually being forced to be here right now to hold this webinar, because it is necessary for the future of the education of our children, for the next generation, that we have to innovate. We have to move. It's a revolution. And you and I today, we have the task of changing everything, of staying behind or moving forward. But I think the first thing we have to do is walk past that fear of the digital world, walk past the fear of the complexity or the apparent complexity of what digital is about. And that's why I'm actually really excited about the package, the solution that HITCH is bringing onwards. And talking about fear, one of my best definitions or quotes about fear is this quote of, courage is not the absence of fear, is the presence of fear, but actually the decision to move forward in spite of it. That's my best definition of fear. And Seth Godin, one of my, the most amazing thought leader, says that fear should be a compass. What you're afraid of, you should actually go do it. So if you're afraid of going digital, if you're afraid that of taking your school digital, or you're afraid of going digital as a teacher, that is what you should actually be doing. Fear should be a compass for you. So if you are still here, if you haven't signed off this webinar, I'm going to assume, for now, without data, that you want to come into this digital world. So welcome. Welcome to Zoom. Welcome to TikTok. Welcome to Moodle. Welcome to every other package that is the digital world. Welcome to a world where teachers are digital specialists. Let's talk about teachers as digital specialists. As digital specialists, the first thing we actually have to do is to learn how to use the tech, right? We need to learn how to use the tech. We need to prepare ourselves for digital classrooms where we are thoroughly familiar with the necessary tools to deploy learning, and also be internet savvy, be digitally savvy, right? In today's world, classrooms will be converted to Zoom rooms. Homework books will be sent as, emails sometimes. So we need to be able to navigate this world of this digital world. Welcome to the age where teachers are creatives. This is the age where, when you talk about creatives, it shouldn't be restricted to maybe photographers or painters, or script writers or filmmakers. This is the age where teachers too are creatives, because in digital classes, only creativity will capture the attention of your students. I've seen teachers use sound effects in their classroom, right? So, the effects a radio station would normally use, all the nice effects to grab attention and to keep people engaged. Teachers use them now in their classroom. That is a way of being creative. Teacher use themed, an idea would be to play themed classroom, days, maybe, I don't know what the theme is, maybe 90s theme, for instance, or celebrity theme, dress like any celebrity you want and come to classroom that day and we'll learn like that. I've seen teachers who use TikTok to engage with, their new generation students. I've seen teachers who play games with their students after the classroom just to connect. It's the online world. Online games is a way to connect and engage outside the classroom. Welcome to the age of increased exposure for teachers, improved local and international opportunities as well. I think I have friends who are doing this, English as a second language and teaching internationally, because recruiters, they don't just right now expect you to have, the degrees. They also expect you to be able to use these tools we are talking about. So your online experience with Zoom or other products, or maybe even HITCH will help you to be able to be competitive in the market. And yeah, I have a friend who did this. I think recently he got he's already playing in this digital world, and he was approached. I think it was via social media. He was approached by an organization who said, "Hey, we saw we saw that you have a really unique way of teaching. I think it was data analytics or something. Can you come teach it to our audience, to our students as well?" And he was like, yeah, of course, I will come teach it. And he demanded, I think they wanted to pay him, of course, in the Nigerian currency. And he said, no, I want to be paid in dollars, because it was an organization from the US. And I found that so fascinating, how really the world has just become very small and, a village, just because of these, how digital we've all gotten. And I think these people that even invited him, they really didn't even ask for degrees and all those things. They just saw that he's doing it and he's making impact. He's making the data show that, the students are growing, and they invited him to come. And I think that is something that happens, just break down the need for, the certifications. And I'm not against certification though, but it's also the age of teachers as thought leaders. Get on video, right? I think that's one of the most effective ways of building thought leadership. Get on video. Pick up a pen, or in this situation, a keyboard. Share your process, share your thoughts, share your expertise. Get comfortable with sharing all you know about your particular field. Ours is the noblest profession. We should be able to come out and lead, and not allow others dictate what happens to teachers or dictate what happens in the teaching profession. And talking about thought leadership, it's something I've been so fascinated about, how someone can stay, for example, in a profession. Let's use the teaching profession as an example. Someone can stay in the profession for, 20 years, 10 years, but they are not considered thought leaders. But someone will come in and stay for 2 years, 3 years, they become thought leaders, right? The thought of people who stay for 2 years, 3 years are, consulted against those who have stayed for 20, 25 years. And the difference between that two is just getting online, using digital tools, share your thoughts, get on video, speak to people about what you do. Share your processes, share your wins, share your challenges. That is how we build thought leadership. So this is the next on the slide, leverage HITCH, right? So of course, we are all here to talk about HITCH and what they bring on board, which is today, especially, they'll talk about content curation. They'll talk about educational videos and content production. And I think these are just really, really important aspects of the digital world of where teachers are. I think for most, both teachers and change makers, I actually just finished a course in the Lagos Business School, a non-profit course in the Lagos Business School. And one thing I realized, and I think this can actually be expanded to teachers, is also how little we in this the social sector, whether education or non-profit, how little we know about this digital world that is leading everything, that is making everything happen. We know very little about it. That's why today I would love everyone here to be able to leverage HITCH to learn about content curation, how to ensure that content meets learners' needs. Learn about the science of educational videos. Is actually a science. There's a system behind it. Please learn it. Content production, right? What we do most time is consume, right? When we go on the internet, for instance, we scroll, we get things from people, but we hardly ever produce. Being able to produce it sets you up for even more opportunities in the future and even in the present. I mean, if you think about it, HITCH is inviting me today to give this presentation just because I produce content. True or false, they can, they can state if I'm wrong or not. But it's just because of that content production. So if you as well start producing content, and it's really easy to do it, you will also be open to even more opportunities and, of course, thought leadership, as we stated initially. So yes, so this is the final slide. So really, the last thing I would just say is good luck, and I hope you make a difference in your classroom and you make a difference in the world as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so again, thank you so much, Henry, there. And for anybody who has questions for Henry, we will be taking questions at the end here, so feel free. But as he did share his link there, so, feel free to visit his website, reach out to him on Instagram. As Henry had said, it was actually a series of photos that he had posted about an interaction with a school child, going back a number of years ago when he was with Teach for Nigeria, that had literally been so eloquent and so detailed and painted such an incredible story. That our CEO, Uche, is on the call here, originally thought it was a video he had posted. That is the capability of storytelling, and one of the main important points that I want you to take away from all of this presentation. If you're able to reflect the story, if you're able to inspire, just the limits that are placed on you are not as, or the boundaries to engaging in this space are not as high as you may think. And so hopefully in the presentation that I'll be giving here soon, we'll be able to now start to provide you with some of the underlying tools to begin to become the change leader and to begin to really engage in this digital reality that we live in now, especially in the education space. So again, thank you so much, Henry. It was absolutely fantastic. And I will be sharing my screen here now, so one moment. So once again, everybody, my name is Zach Burns. I am the head of content for HITCH. At HITCH, we're on a mission to catalyze potential throughout all of sub-Saharan Africa, or Africa as a whole, beginning in Nigeria. So our goal is to be able to empower teachers, empower students, and to really be able to not only provide tools to be able to engage in this new digital reality, but also the capacity and the underlying skills to allow everybody to democratize and to participate in this. Because at the end of the day, whereas you have the NERDC, you have the national curriculum boards, you have NGOs, everybody's working in this space, but it is the teacher who is the key touch point for all of these students. And it is always going to be the key denominator that teachers have an intense role to play and a very important role to play. So with that in mind, I'm going to kind of jump in here into some of those new realities that have emerged since COVID-19 in particular has struck, but these trends were already in motion prior to COVID-19. And so I just really want to focus on that as well. These were already trends that were starting to occur. COVID-19 really just brought the pain point on the most. So when COVID-19 originally had hit, and everybody was kind of in chaos and disarray, because at the end of the day, everybody realized students being out of school was incredibly detrimental to their education. Whether it be out of school for even 3 days, data shows that can have incredibly detrimental effects. And now we're talking about school children being out for months at a time. And in this vacuum that was left behind, what ended up occurring is teachers looked to their schools for guidance, schools looked to their state governments for guidance, state government looked to national government for guidance, and national governments were going to multilateral institutions, going to the UN, going to UNICEF. They were looking for guidance. And in all of this chaos, what ended up occurring was a completely fractured response. And with everybody taking the onus on themselves. And in particular, a lot of the times that onus was being pushed down onto the bottom there, onto the bottom ladder, the teachers. The teachers were the ones who had already managed to establish and build these connections with their students. They deeply cared about the progress of their students. And many felt helpless in the state that was brought on because of the remote learning. And so what ended up occurring in large part was there was a huge rush to create content. Everybody wanted to create their own content because there was a vacuum of resources, or all of these fractured, as Henry had kind of touched on. Some people were using Google Classroom, some were using Zoom, some were using Moodle, some were using YouTube. And there was this incredibly fractured result in the system. And so what I want to touch on here is, whereas the main purpose of this presentation is going to be to give some underlying understanding and theory behind how to create educational videos, to go over some of the barriers to producing that educational content and those educational videos. But before we even start in the design and develop of those educational resources, one of the key points that was brought to the forefront during all of this was you do not need to create your own content. Always. There is a time and a place always to create your own content. However, there already exists a huge catalog of openly accessible, easily accessible content and educational videos that were already existing. However, the fact of the matter is it was very difficult to locate those resources. It's very difficult, and teachers already have so much on their plate. They're already trying to engage with students in their households now at this point, rather than have a centralized point of contact. And so where do they go to find these resources? Educational video is a great resource during this time to take advantage of, because it has all of those different components. It has auditory explanations, it has graphic representations. It can almost, and it does not, I want to emphasize here, it does not substitute the role of the teacher, but it definitely augments the ability without students in the classroom to be able to learn lessons and be able to engage. So on this presentation, I'm going to start off actually talking about content curation. And so this is actually how to select and how to judge and evaluate existing resources that are out there, in particular educational video, where to get them from. So on HITCH, this has actually been one of our key missions, is to make this easily accessible for teachers and students. And then we're going to jump into the content design. So now let's just say you've gone through the curation and through the evaluation, which I'll walk you through, and you've determined that there just isn't the content that you need. And so now, whether you be an individual teacher, whether you be a school, an institution, a state government, now you need to decide how to create an educational video that fills the needs of your students and your audience. So to do that, we'll be discussing the underlying learning science, because believe it or not, there is a very well-defined science in cognitive theory, but also in application and within the classroom experience. There's been a lot of research that's been done on these. And so I'll be reviewing that. And then the final part is, again, now you've gone through, you've designed, you understand the learning science. There's this belief that there's a very large barrier to entry to creating educational videos. But the truth of the matter is, it's really very doable for the individual teacher, for the school, for the state government to create very engaging, very informative educational videos for your students. So at the very end here, I'm going to just give a very high level overview of what it takes to set up, to get to that barrier, to be able to enter into the educational video production realm. And now, given time constraints, I will be touching on this all fairly quickly. So again, the video and the recording will be made available, but we will be having follow-up webinar series that focus on each of these different components more in depth with additional guest speakers. So we'll have some video producers that have worked with us from Nigeria that'll come on and kind of help guide how to get into this production. So again, this is going to be a lot of information. It's also going to be relatively high level, but just know that we will be holding these as a regular series. And so therefore you can always jump on to the specific areas that go a little bit deeper. All right, so with that in mind, I'm going to jump to my next slide here, if it will let me. There we go. So as I had mentioned, when it comes to content production, most people look at this and they say, oh my goodness, I'm a math teacher. I don't have any good resources. I need to create a video for my students immediately. And generally speaking, what they'll do is they'll record themselves in front of a video, in front of a camera with maybe a blackboard behind them. But the first question that really needs to be asked is, do I need to develop this content? And what I mean by that is, does this content already exist? Is there somebody out there who's already created a great video that's going over this? And in many cases, there is the need to contextualize this content. So there is a big push for Africa-produced content. And that's one of the reasons we're hosting this webinar as a whole. We want to inspire teachers to really stimulate and increase the amount of Nigerian-created content in the market. However, there are cases that exist where you're talking about math concepts. You're talking about addition and subtraction of fractions. Regardless of the context that you come from, regardless of the geography, math is a universal language, which means there is great content out there available for you to already use. So the first question, whenever you're looking at, do I need to create, or I want to create content or an educational video, is do I need to, or does this already exist? The second question should always be, should I create this content? Now that's a little bit more of a fluid concept here. Should I create this content? The first thing you should be asking is, am I well versed in this subject? One of the biggest issues that people run into and relying on sources such as YouTube for their educational video content is there is no guarantee that the person who produced that content is an authority or is well versed in that subject matter. So the worst thing that could possibly happen is that you're sharing an educational video that is incorrect in nature, that just at the very bones of it does not have the correct assumptions. And that then becomes disinformation and leads to a whole spoiling of the education system in this digital realm. So the very first question is, if you're going to create, do I know this content well enough? Should I be the one creating it? The very next one is the subject matter well suited for video? As I had mentioned, things like math topics, even physics topics, chemistry topics, these are all very good topics to cover in educational videos as they have a strong visual component. There's the ability to run through real world examples. There's the ability to walk through students through the different steps. But if you're talking about a class like philosophy, or if you're talking about for any international baccalaureate students studying in the Cambridge levels, things along those lines, there's theory of knowledge. There are certain topics that are in need of extreme debates, that there are portions of this that need to be discussed, and that, again, that role of the teacher still plays a very central point in coming up with this thought. It's not as discrete facts. So when we get started into this, these are always the first things that you need to consider. And now at HITCH, what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've established a rubric taking directly from the NERDC curriculum on how to evaluate this content to reflect the teacher's needs. And for this, we really rely on a base pyramid here that we will show. And there's really the 4 A's. The first one, oh, and sorry, what just showed up on the screen here is actually pulled directly from the Nigerian curriculum. So this is what teachers are presented with. We've digitized this to make it easier to use. But what it shows is basically the grade level, the subject, the theme name, the learning outcomes, the content items, and the evaluation processes here. So it has all of the key points that you need to design a lesson or design a video that is going to fulfill the learning outcomes for this particular subject, theme, and topic. So the very first one on it is accuracy. This is what I was referring to. Is the information correct? And when looking at the NERDC curriculum, there's actually two sections here that prescribe for you, so you know if it is the correct one, and that is the performance objectives and the evaluation guide. So when watching a video that already has been created, the first things you want to know is, does this video address the performance objectives as they're laid out in the NERDC curriculum? Does it meet the evaluation guide? So the evaluation guide is there if you were to quiz or assess the students after the lesson, here is what they should be able to answer. And as long as the video holds up to those two standards, it's accurate, at least you have a solid basis for that video. But that also isn't everything that makes up an effective e-learning video. The next thing you really want to make sure that you're addressing is the ability. When you're talking about ability, now you're talking about student performance and at what level the student is learning at and engaging with. Again, this information is directly provided for you in the NERDC. We know that primary one is the level of the audience we're dealing with. So our video is going to have to be appropriate for students at the age range of primary one. In addition, you can always look back at the evaluation guide as well, and that can give a little bit more information for you, because as you're going through videos, you may have two videos that cover the same topics. One is dedicated for the right level, the next one is too advanced. So ability and accuracy become the foundational building blocks for how to determine if this content is correct for me and my students. The next, as we start to get into more of what would be considered optimization, is going to be accessibility. And now when you're looking at accessibility, this is when we're talking about contextualizing video content to reflect the indigenous knowledge base of the students. And when I say indigenous knowledge base, what I mean is you could teach a lesson on, for instance, what's provided here in basic science, and you could be talking about things in the classroom, school, and home in the content section. But the things that are in and around the classroom, school, and home for a Nigerian student are going to be considerably different from that of an American or a Canadian student, or of even potentially a Ghanaian student. And in that case, now you're getting to the optimization. And so you really want to focus on utilizing what's in the content to now make sure that's what's being reflected in the video that you're using. Now, the final component of the pyramid here is appeal. Appeal is far more subjective. It is the creme de la creme. It is the optimization for exactly who your audience is, exactly who the student is. And I'll just give a quick example here. Here are three different types of educational video. Each of them may be covering the exact same topic. On the one on the left, we have a Khan Academy style video, which we'll dive into more in our development side and design side. In the middle, we have a group called Math Antics. And on the right, we have a clip from Crash Course. Now, each of these is subtly different. The very first one is a screen recorder style video. It's purely narration with written word on the page. The one in the middle is a presenter style. There's a presenter there with a green screen behind them. Gives a little bit more flexibility for things like cartoons and animations, and to be a little bit more engaging. And then the final one is animation, and animation in and of itself, lends itself, many think, to just the lower level, but in fact, it can be far more engaging, even up to SS3 level, to have an animated video that really provides you with the depth of knowledge and graphics, etc., that are available to you. So we have done this at HITCH. We've actually already gone through and we have worked with this exact NERDC tool that I had showed you. And our Nigerian educators who work with us on staff and our content curators are all trained in this exact pyramid. And so what they've been able to produce here has been, this is actually our website here, is they've gone through, and rather than make you have to go through and evaluate all of those different components in the pyramid, we've already gone through and done that for you. So you can go to whatever theme topic you would like within the categories here, and then right there you'll see theme 1, learning about our environment, topic 1, and now each of these videos will correspond to a different learning outcome on the curriculum. We emphasize those contents, those pieces of content that have been developed by Nigerians and in the African context. And on top of that, we've given a variety of those different presentations to be able to capture all of the different students that may have a preference for one style of learning versus another. So this is something that at HITCH, it's a free resource. You're able to use it without any issues. Your students can log in, there's no payment, and immediately you get access to this content. But we also understand at HITCH that we're a limited team and that teachers are the ones that are most familiar all the time with what content needs to be utilized and what the students need to hear. So with that in mind, we've begun to launch what's called our lesson planning tool. And what this would work as is just in a Google Chrome browser extension. If you are a teacher and you are teaching, say, JS1 and you're teaching general mathematics, you've gone through our videos, you didn't find a video that meets your specific needs, whether it be that optimization at the top, those qualitative components that make it relatable to your students, or whether it be because there just wasn't a video on that particular concept, we're making it readily easy for you to easily get online, find the video you want, click the attachment, and build your own lesson plan with that content. Not only that, we allow you to take notes that allows you to emphasize, hey, this video needs to be done more Nigeria specific. And so then already what you're doing is you're opening the doors to this design process, which comes next. You have already started evaluating the content that exists. You've looked at ways to optimize on that content. And now you're at the stage where, hey, I need to start designing my own e-learning video. Now, when going into that, the immediate push from most schools, teachers, universities, state governments has been e-learning content. Okay, this is easy. Educational video. I'm just going to set up a camera. I'm going to stand in front of a blackboard and I'm going to give my lesson just like I always would. However, that is not a piece of e-learning content. You have to understand that e-learning content in its definition means that there is a value add from the resource that you've created. Just filming a lecture or a teacher giving a lecture in front of a blackboard actually takes away value. You don't have that interactive component. You can't have students asking questions about what's on the chalkboard. Not only that, the quality may be bad. Maybe the audio and the visual is bad. You can't even read what's on the board. So in fact, by doing this style of e-learning video, you are detracting value. And instead, what you could be doing is using the learning science principles, which I'll review, and you'll go ahead and you can create these videos that do a fantastic job, that show you, value add can be showing diagrams. Value add can be having, as we'll get into it, a more interactive nature to it. Value add can be showing step-by-step processes. Value add can be showing examples within pictures and diagrams. It can be students who don't have access to lab equipment at home. You need to show them how to use a lab equipment for chemistry. That is value add in e-learning, and that is what your e-learning resources need to be reflecting. So when we're getting into this, what we're going to talk about here is actually the content principles, the multimedia theory and learning science that underlies any of this cognitive theory behind multimedia learning, behind educational video production. And for that, in large part, we're going to be focusing on writing done by Richard E. Mayer, who is a cognitive science PhD and has done extensive research in this field of learning science and multimedia. And he's come up with a number of principles that are essentially guiding principles for your videos. Now, one of the things that I want to touch on again here is that these are guiding principles. This was created, these research was done in a vacuum, and there are exceptions to the rule. So on a final slide after we go over these, I'm going to be discussing some of those exceptions and reasons why you can and should break these learning principles from time to time. So the first thing I'll just want to go over is at a very base level, the cognitive theory of multimedia learning is broken down into one key concept, and that's the dual channel theory. Dual channel theory basically states that there is only two ways that the mind takes in information, two standard ways, I should say, that the mind takes in information. And that is through the ears and through the eyes. So when you're looking at multimedia presentation, if you have words on a screen, you're actually using both. You're using if you have words being read on the screen, you have two different ways that you're using it. You're listening to the words as they're being read to you, but then you're also using your eyes to read that information and digest that information. The same thing goes with pictures. Pictures, you are just going to be using your eyes. And then you have the process that information enters on the screen in front of you here. So words will come into your mouth or to your ears. They'll become sounds, which will then build this information bank in your head. But the fact of the matter is the body very much struggles when you're trying to do both of these at the same time. And this becomes one of the key principles. If you're taking in words and you're hearing something different, so if you're seeing something on a screen and somebody's reading something different to you, you are going to struggle to process that information. It's just the way the brain works. It's the way we take in information. Now, underlying this concept is the 5, and actually there are more principles than this, but for the sake of the presentation, we're going to focus on the 5 immediate principles of multimedia learning. The first one talks about coherence. And what that means is that are there extraneous words, sounds, and pictures, or are they excluded from the video you're watching? Signaling. Are key steps in the narration signaled visually in front of you? So even if you're hearing something, as long as it's being augmented by what you're seeing, then this is a beneficial component of your educational video. Redundancy is what we were referring to before, where there's not necessarily a need for both words to be on the screen and narration to reflect exactly what those words are. Your body is processing that information when it reads it, just because, or when you read the text, just because somebody is now narrating that word for you, does not mean all of a sudden you're going to glean more information. In fact, most people in that case would just listen and now will ignore the visual components. The next part is spatial contiguity, and this is that when you're showing something like a diagram or a video, that the words and images need to be very close to each other, so that way they're reflective of what's being discussed. And then temporal contiguity, which means that your process in multimedia videos should be a step-by-step process. You shouldn't provide everybody the entire solution or the entire problem at once. You should break it down step by step and make sure that you're intonating that step by step is what you're doing for your presentation. So I'm just quickly now going to run through some examples of each of these principles within the educational video context. So here's principle 1, coherence. So you have 2 different videos in front of you now. On the left is Khan Academy, and on the right you have one from Few School. Both are discussing the exact same concept, nitrogen cycle. Now on the left-hand side, what you're seeing in Few School, talking about coherence, is that the only images that you're seeing on your screen, whether it be the DNA strand, the molecules there, the plants, even the bacteria drawn in, each of those are key components to understanding nitrogen cycle. You need to understand each of those components and what they are and how they interact. Now on the right-hand side with Few School, it definitely looks a little bit more engaging. It's a little bit more attractive to look at. But what you're also seeing here is that there's these plants and there's this little bubble here with like some little organism looking, but there's no description as to what those are, why those are important. And in many cases, that added animation is actually distracting for students. They will be focusing on, why are those leaves squared or oriented in the way they are? What are those? Why are the roots deep? And instead, that really all they need to be focusing on is the nitrate and the nitrogen here and their interaction. So that's an example of coherence, where you really just want to have the components, the most important elements involved in the video that you're creating. The next principle that we were discussing here is signaling. And again, this is signaling in the sense that you need to be able to indicate what is the most important. And so again, we're going to use the same Khan Academy video here. And what you're going to see is there's arrows pointing at the different molecules. Not only that, there's arrows that indicate the cycle itself, starting from the blue molecule on your left, going to bacteria, going to ammonia, going to the plant, going to amino acid, going to the DNA, and then the whole cycle. So each of those arrows is actually indicating and signaling to you what is most important in this video. Now, to go along with that, you also have redundancy. So if you were to listen to this video, he would not be sitting there and saying nitrogen cycle, 78% N2, bacteria, arrow, ammonia, arrow, leaf, arrow. No, he is actually going to be explaining the nitrogen process, the nitrogen cycle process. He's going to be telling you how each of these components interact with each other. But he is not writing word for word on the video exactly what he's saying, because there's just no need for that in this particular case. Now, moving forward again, we're going to go to principles 4 and 5. So these are spatial and temporal contiguity principles. So this is presenting words and pictures near one another and demonstrating sequencing. So when you're looking at this again, those arrows, as they go through the cycle, are showing sequencing. And if you were to watch this video, they would slowly build out the sequence in order as well. So you could always follow along with the different steps. Now, in terms of spatial contiguity, as you have noticed, ATP is written right next to the ATP molecule. DNA is written right next to the DNA molecule. It's not one of those situations which you'll see in some textbooks where it'll say on the diagram on the next page, look for these components, and it'll say 1 ATP. And on the next page, there'll be a diagram and it'll have a 1 next to it. Even that act of having to refer to a different area for the text as opposed to the image you're looking at can cause people to lose concentration, can cause confusion, and it doesn't help them to process that information using that dual channel theory that we were talking about at the very beginning. Instead, they maybe only remember the text and they'll remember the order 1 through 10 as every component in that video, but do they associate it directly with the image that you want them to have? And generally speaking, the answer is going to be no. So in that regards, the spatial contiguity becomes very important for capturing that image in the brain of the student. On top of that, you have the temporal contiguity, which again is sequencing. And because if you provide this all at once, nobody knows where the start point is. You need to walk people through this process. It is a cycle. You need to explain each step in order what is happening. So just at a high level, there is a very beginning to the design process and some of the components that really go into this learning science. And I fully encourage everybody to look into Richard E. Mayer's Principles of Multimedia Design. It's really not difficult concepts. It doesn't get much more in depth than what we're discussing right now. Now, that being said, and as I had mentioned beforehand, there are times where these multimedia theories do not hold true. You have to break some of these rules. We do not exist in a vacuum in which there are no considerations that need to be taken into account for your audience. Khan Academy is the perfect example. They abide by multimedia learning theory to the T, and their videos are incredibly effective at conveying knowledge and information. But are they the most engaging videos you've ever come across? Probably not. If you're going to show a primary student a Khan Academy video and expect them to sit there and get all of the information and be fascinated staring at the screen, you know, I'm sure plenty of parents have been at home and wanted to put on an educational video for their child during COVID. Khan Academy probably is the one that's going to have them pestering mom and dad pretty quickly after putting it on. But if you're to do a video such as the one in the bottom right with math antics, you're going to see animation. You're going to see apples and fruits popping up on the screen. He will sing some songs. He'll throw on costumes, and he is covering the exact same content that Khan Academy is, but he's breaking some of the multimedia principles. He's breaking the first principle, coherence, in that video. There are more things on the screen happening than what is needed to convey the information. And that's just a fact because he chose, or math antics in this case, and maybe you, if you're working with primary school children, will choose that entertainment value, that engaging value is more important than just conveying the information. There's often the situation that arises, and this goes beyond e-learning content into the textbook. A textbook may not be the most exciting thing for your student, but is it teaching them the right knowledge? Yes. And the fact of the matter is sometimes the medicine just needs a little bit of sugar, a spoonful of sugar, as the old saying goes, to take down. And in this case, breaking that first principle of coherence and making it a more engaging video may have that more lasting effect that you want, as opposed to just the purely multimedia theory of video style of Khan Academy. Now, there's one other doctor, Dr. Derek Mueller, who also runs a YouTube channel called Veritasium. And he has written pretty extensively a pushback against this cognitive and multimedia theory. Now, his argument is not that the multimedia theory is wrong and that this isn't the best way to convey knowledge. He argues that it eliminates the interactive portion. Within the classroom, capturing that interactiveness between students, between student and teacher is a very important component in the development of learning. Students may be afraid to voice their concerns. They may think an idea or the way they're understanding a concept is wrong. And therefore they won't speak up, or in watching the video, they'll never get the ability to explore why their pattern of thinking may be just off a little bit. And so what Derek Mueller does in all of his videos is he essentially has a component that essentially recreates that interactive experience. So when a lot of people think of interactive, they think you should be able to click on a video, you should have an assessment portion after it, there should be some manipulation of the components. But in fact, what he's shown is that actually all you need to do is simulate that student-teacher interaction in the video. So if you've given this lesson and you know your students are constantly getting mixed up on these two components, or there's a question that keeps coming up, put that in your video. Find a way to simulate this teacher-student interaction. It could be something along the lines of, oh, but teacher, in this case, Dr. Derek, like, I don't understand. I thought you had said blank. And then he responds, oh, I understand why you think that. Here is the correct solution. And this can be done not only in a presenter style video. Khan Academy videos can do this as well. Let's say you have a sample question from a WIAC exam, or the junior WIAC exam, or the JAM, and you are showing a sample question and you're going over with the students. Rather than just tell them what the correct answer is, show them why the other choices are incorrect. Eliminate those other ones, because those are going to be the questions that they're thinking. If you've designed your options correctly, the student should assume that maybe it's one of these other multiple choice answers. So you need to take the time to explain why that is not the case. And in doing so, you're actually building a more interactive experience for the students. They're able to empathize with that student who would be asking the question. Now, the very final time, it just as one more example as to when you would break these multimedia principles is for the reasons of accessibility. So when I talk about accessibility, I'm talking about students with special needs. Engaging in the digital realm, in person, teachers are able to address any kind of disability. So if a student can't see, then they'll be able to reiterate auditorily what the student needs to learn. And this same principle applies then to multimedia theory. So when we talk about redundancy and we talk about don't have word for word text as to what you're actually, or don't write word for word text for what you're saying, for a student that can't hear, you need to have that. So offering that functionality. Now that can be something as simple as a closed caption or a subtitle for the video, but it can go far beyond that as well. There's a lot of great work being done on accessibility and multimedia. And for hard of hearing students, it's more engaged or more visual components, visual interaction and manipulation of the elements on the screen. But really what I just want to get at with this part is just showing that there are times where you are going to need to break these multimedia theory principles. And it's okay to do that. If it's in the benefit of your student and for the intended outcome that you wanted, that you need to break it, then you should be able to. So that is kind of the final step on the learning science that I'll go over here today. We do have, as I said, this is just the very intro into this learning science. We will be holding more in-depth and more personable workshops on this. So that way, if somebody wants to go ahead and engage or have these discussions, we will have availability to do so. Now, the final thing I just want to touch on here, and I know you guys have all been so great, we're running a little bit over the time here, but what's been so fantastic has been now that you understand, okay, I've designed my video, I know the content, this doesn't exist, I need to make it more Africa-centric, or I need a video that isn't available anywhere else. I know how I want to design it. I understand the theory underlying it to make it effective. Now, how do I actually produce this content? And there's this, again, this belief that the barrier to producing educational content and educational videos is so high. But in fact, what we're learning during this time is that it's really not. You really just need to follow some simple steps and be on the lookout for some great resources to be able to engage in this. There are a number of teachers that I've worked with in Kaduna State, in Lagos State, who, without any feedback from us, already endeavored upon creating their own content, and we're doing a fantastic job doing so. And so what I just want to look at, this is just a very high level. We'll have follow-on concepts here. But pre-production is the first and most important part of making a video. You need to plan your video, use those multimedia learning concepts and plan step by step, storyboard, write up your lesson plan that you would normally do in the classroom, and now look to convert this. Write the script. And again, the storyboarding component, have each shot that you want to do, understand what you're trying to do in each one of those frames. So that way you can get rid of or utilize or know when to break any of these principles that we had discussed. Now, the resources you need could also seem like a barrier. There's staging equipment, most important being lighting. The next one being audio equipment. And surprisingly enough, camera is not as important as you may think. A camera, you can get by with just using a smartphone camera. And one of the people that we're hoping to have do one of these talks with us actually did this. They've made a series of videos using just their phones, and they're fantastic quality. So don't think you need to invest all of this money and resources into setting up a studio. The truth is, as long as you're abiding by these concepts and knowing when to break them, any quality is going to be good enough. You just need to know where to look. The next stage, of course, has to do more, pardon me. The next stage has to do with filming and recording. So you have to have a director. Screen recording software such as Camtasia is free, so I'd recommend looking into that. And just be prepared to do a whole bunch of takes. Don't think you're going to get it right in the first go right away. And then finally, post-production, you want to upload as soon as possible to a central computer, because there's always the fear within the Nigerian context in particular that you will lose that content that you filmed on your phone, that you filmed on a camera, that you tried to upload. We all know that there's issues that people run into generally just with the connectivity on their devices in Nigeria in particular, but across the world. And so always making sure you have a secure location to save it so you don't have to redo your process. And then the final suggestion would be to work with a program like Final Cut Pro, which again is very readily available. They have free service levels, and that allows you to manipulate far more than you might think. So again, this is all very high level. It's a lot of information, I understand, but just know we will be having follow-up webinars. And also you can join us on our Discord channel, which I'll share in a second. And we keep this conversation going every day. We have educators that are having in-depth conversation about this content, as well as content on our platform. I participate. And then quickly, I just want to give a special thanks. So Henry, again, I can't begin to explain how much of an inspiration following Henry's journey has been. He's the reason that we're familiar with Teach for Nigeria. He's the reason that this community is starting to be built. There's an incredible following for Henry, and it's completely understandable why. He is passionate, he is empathetic, and he inspires our team at HITCH quite regularly. So thank you again so much, Henry. And then I also want to take the opportunity to thank Amy Ogan, who is a Thomas and Lydia Moran Associate Professor of Learning Science at the Human Computer Interaction Institute for Carnegie Mellon. She has been a mentor to myself. She's working with the MasterCard Foundation, and she was the one who originally taught me Rich Mayer's principles of multimedia theory, and has just been such a great resource. So by all means, I just want to also take the opportunity to thank her and to thank all of you for taking the time to hop on our webinar today. Again, please feel free to sign up for a free account at www.app.hitch.video. Always feel free to send me any emails that you have inquiry into making content or otherwise. And then, of course, as I had mentioned, please sign up for our Discord channel for further discussions and all the news on our upcoming webinars, as well as to view the recording for this webinar. And to get there, it's just www.hitch.video/Discord, and then you'll be invited to sign up. And this is an open forum for discussion. It's meant for Nigerian educators. It's meant to build this community that we all need, and to provide more guidance in this vacuum, in this transition to a digitally enabled education space in Nigeria and throughout Africa. So thank you all so much. And again, to all you educators out there, thank you for all your hard work. It's been shown, all the students we talk to, we've heard hundreds of stories, of just great effort being put out by teachers. So thank you all. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you very much, everyone. I can see some questions. So someone is asking let me just read this out. So it says, at times, it's difficult to find a video that suits the topic you're teaching. So are you saying we can create our own video, and how do we go about that?
Yes. So, the very first thing that I would say to that is, Of course, explore to make sure, again, that you are finding, that you've gone through many of the resources. And if you're not finding anything at that point, again, that is when I would encourage you to join our follow-up webinars on how to create content for, again, taking advantage of this low barrier to access. So at a very minimal cost, we're going to be having webinars and workshops that really go over the actual video production side of things. But again, the first step is just developing that input, that lesson plan that reflects what you would want to create in the video. And then also, don't be afraid to borrow from existing ideas. Maybe somebody has created a video that's great, but it just doesn't apply to the knowledge of your students or the experience of your students. It's okay to use that as a template or a blueprint when looking at creating the content yourself. We also do work with some partners that focus on things like translation, so you can always feel free to reach out to us in that regards as well.
Great. So Zach, so someone's also asking, it says, thank you for this. Are we able to, does this also apply to preschool teachers? Yeah.
Yes. So we work with primary 1 all the way to SS3. So we haven't opened that early education space yet, but it is an incredibly exciting space. The videos that are coming out are just great. They focus a little bit differently because, as I was saying, sometimes you do have to break those principles of multimedia design in order to reflect your audience. And so with the preschool level or the early childhood education level, there's a lot more of a focus on child development, brain development. So recognizing shapes just around you. That is something that would not follow in line with the principles that we're talking about with multimedia design theory, but instead really focuses on the reality and experience of a student at that age. So, you know, I'm happy to, we don't have those resources currently available on our platform. We are working with a partner now to have some of those resources available. But yes, by all means, there are still ways to engage with these digital resources for that particular age group as well. If you want to send me an email, whoever asked that question, I'd be happy to provide you with some resources.
Thank you, Zach. So there aren't any more questions. What I do see in this poll that 15 people have questions. So please feel free to send your questions. I'm sure Zach won't mind just maybe waiting it for giving it 5 minutes or more for the questions to come in. About the PowerPoint and the recording, we will definitely share the recording, including Henry's part, the parts we missed in Henry's presentation. We'll definitely share that via email after this, within the next couple of days. I see someone's hands raised. Is it possible? Yes. So how do we get to create our own content? So over the next couple of months, we will be, this is our first webinar. We would like to take any information from you. If there's certain areas you want to focus on and you have questions on in creating content, please send us the questions. We will be doing a series of webinars focusing on specific topics under content creation, educational content creation. So please stay tuned. We have your email addresses, no worries about that. And we'll be sending the recording to you once it's ready. So I see a message that says, you have a question, but your network is bad. So you can send the question to the chat. If you rather send it privately to the host, there's a way, if you look at the chat box, you can select either to send it to everyone or to send it specifically to the HITCH team or Zach. So Zach's name on, if you rather send it directly to Zach, Zach's name on the call right now is Zach from HITCH. So if you search at the search list of participants, you should be able to see his name and the HITCH team and send your message out. How do we get a notification for the next webinar meeting? Yeah, so if you registered for this meeting with your direct email, we'll add that email, we'll add the list of emails to our contact list and contact you via that email. If you also love to, yeah, so if you also love to connect with us in another way, you can send an email to zach@hitch.video or tammy@hitch.video. You can also follow us on social media, on everything. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, so either of these platforms is a great way to reach us. We're pretty responsive.
All right.
It looks like there aren't any more questions coming in. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can see all the messages just saying thank you.
You do not need to pay. I do want to touch on that, Alucci. You do not need to pay for the HITCH service. It's a completely free web service. And one of the things I did not mention, I apologize, there is offline capabilities for the HITCH website. So I know there's data concerns that arise from videos and educational videos. So just know that if you're on the platform, there is a tab under every video that you can click to download, and then that will make it available offline for you. So if you're in a place where you have Wi-Fi, you want to download the videos and then watch them at home, it's a functionality that we do have built into the service. We also have optimized our video to use the least amount of data possible for when you are doing the downloading or viewing. I did not touch on that, but it is an important feature.
Okay, so Zach, there's another question here. It says, is there any software or a guided template one can use to create a video content?
So there is software that can be used, in particular when we're talking about the Khan Academy style video. A very useful and free resource is called Camtasia. So that's a very fantastic if you just want to start to get into that kind of screen recorder style video. As far as the template, this is one of the things that we're actually working on with the community as a whole. We believe that there is a benefit to standardization of the templates of educational videos, but are we necessarily the best ones to determine what that template looks like? We believe it should be a co-creative process with the teachers. So as we begin to develop these together in conjunction, we can all kind of agree what is the best way. Do we put the theme and topic at the beginning of the video and then move into kind of a presenter style video with somebody in front of the screen? We encourage collaboration above all else. So we really want this to be a co-creative process. We want all of you to work together. We're looking to provide you with a forum to do so and a platform to deliver any of that content that you do manage to create. We will readily and welcome any content that you create to be used on our platform to reach your students for free access as well.
Okay, so there's a question here about PowerPoint. It says, can we use PowerPoint to create videos?
So PowerPoint to create videos is something you can do. It's not a bad starting point, I would say. But again, it is going to kind of lack some of those interactive components behind them, so to speak. So for instance, had I given this presentation, had a recording of myself and just cycled through the slides, do you think you would have gotten as much from it? I think that's the question that you could ask yourself. If you can do it and you can do a recording over it, so maybe you share a video of a PowerPoint, so a recording of your PowerPoint presentation, but maybe you're live presenting over it, I think that tends to be a little bit more effective. Generally speaking, though, I would say it's maybe a good way into it, but it's not going to be necessarily as comprehensive as you may like it for it to be.
Great. Does that answer your question? Joy, does that answer your question? Yeah, so please send in your questions. We can probably take a few more, maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we come to a close here and end the call.
So Yomi, we should be, registration shouldn't be an issue. They are open right now. Just make sure that when it has that location tab there, you just have to click the detect button next to it. And it may prompt you for something like, should I allow this to happen? So just make sure you're allowing. And for anybody with any data or privacy concerns, this is a one-time touch point. So it's not like we're tracking your location or anything along those lines. This is just so we know where our students and teachers are coming from.
Okay, so we have one question here before we take the last question. It says, okay, so we do have 2 more questions right now. It says, what about the use of screencasts for adult education?
Yes, so This is a bit different of a situation. So when you're talking about adult education, and in particular, if you look at a lot of the resources out there that have been developed for adults, so Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, edX, there's a number of adult learning platforms out there. It allows you to really abide by those multimedia theory principles, because you don't really, as an adult who's learning a concept, hopefully you already have the interest and the motivation behind it. So you can do something as simple as a Camtasia screen recorder video. You can do a screencast. One of the components I would say is most helpful, though, is to have some sort of transcript if you're going to do a screencast. So if you're going to do a screencast, just make sure to offer, even after the fact, maybe a text version of or transcript of what you've shared. And the reason being there is that, again, it just allows for another one of those learning modalities to be able to be engaged. So maybe you're watching it the first time, but you don't have the ability to really interact. So now you want to go back and read, or whatever the case may be. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. So the last question, unless someone else has another question, because this was sent by 2 people. So it says, what is the most suitable app for video creation?
Yeah, so again, as a starting point, I again would say start with Camtasia as your screen recorder software. Those of you who are Mac users, you have something called iMovie, generally speaking. That's actually a very great video editing software for those of you with Mac. It's fantastic to be able to use the feature sets that are available. Along with that, there are a few other ones out there. There's an app that's very cool called AR Lupa. So I'll actually type that in the chat. This is one of the more creative open apps for educational video content. Let me share that with everybody. So it's AR Lupa. And what that allows you to do is actually take advantage of augmented reality. And there's various elements, and you can use this on your phone. But you can do things like add a globe to your photo that you can use in the demonstration or in the video that you're formatting. So that's getting some really cool feature sets as well, and it's free to use as well. So AR Lupa is another good resource.
Thank you so much, Zach. Please, if you have any questions, please send them in. We can, if we're not able to answer your questions now, we'll be sure to reach out to you via email. We have your email addresses. I see some people raising up their hand. If you have any questions and you rather not send it to everyone, you can also send it directly to the HITCH team account, who's the host, or Zach on Zoom.
Okay. I did not see any other questions come to me here. Oh, everyone, I just noticed we have one of our producers from Nigeria on with us, Ms. Blessing Chukwuka. Hello, Blessing. It's good to see you again. You guys can all feel free to watch her videos on our platform, DTW Tutorials. It's fantastic.
Okay, I think we can come to an end here. We have our last question, which is just rehashing one of the questions I think I mentioned already. This is also asking about if this training is useful to preschool teachers. I think you said something about this before already. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I had touched on this, and you are correct. So the learning principles here will need to be, I actually think that there's a big space here for understanding the multimedia theory that goes behind working with preschool children, because it is a very different way in which they process information. They're very much at that age in developmental learning, you're learning very much from what you're interacting with in your immediate environment. And so videos can be a little bit more challenging in the sense that they need to be able to reflect the experience of a pre-K child. So there are some resources that we're actually working with a partner to start to implement that really focus on observational learning. So looking around and what do you see and putting a name to that. They don't fall in line with those multimedia learning principles quite as much as those were developed more for high school students and primary students and adult learners. So it is a new field that I think there's a lot of research that still is being done. But I can just tell you that there are people that are working on it currently. But yes, it wouldn't fall in line with those multimedia theories quite as well.
Thank you, Zach. Okay, so I guess we can make this our last question. I know I said the previous one was the last question. So there's someone asking if the lesson planner can be accessed.
So that is one of the features that we will be launching as soon as possible. So again, if you're in the Discord channel with us, if you're on the following webinars, it is one of the things that we are working on quickly to do as fast as possible. So keep an eye out on for it, and we will let people know when it has been launched live. At this point in time, it has not been completed yet. So we are still working on developing it.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Zach, for taking all this time. I'm getting some questions now, but then I will just I'll send you a message privately. If you sent a message after this point, I'll send you a message privately answering that question. But if you would love to connect with the HITCH team directly, you can also connect with us on our Discord channel, which I'll share a link to it right now in the chat. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. We'll be organizing more webinars. If you have specific questions, specific areas you would like us to focus on, please feel free to suggest, because again, we're doing this for teachers, we're doing this for your benefit, we're doing this to address your need and your needs, direct needs. So it is very teacher focused, very much about what you're looking to learn and what skills you're looking to acquire. So thank you again. I will leave this call on for a bit, but then the call will end within the next 2 minutes. So thank you so much again. Zach, did you want to add anything or? Yeah.
No, I mean, again, just thank you all so much. And even the questions just indicate how much passion you guys have towards it and interest towards it. So again, really thankful to have all of you engaging today, and I look forward to building this community out with all of you.